What's up, gamers? Welcome to 2023 Sega News Bits Live. Same show, same format, same host. New news. So it has been a quiet January, a dry January. If you've checked out our website, segabits.com, it's been pretty light on news because honestly, all right, so we've got some fan sites out there like Sonic Stadium do a bang-up job on the Sonic front, but sometimes it's kind of like, oh, there's a new toothpaste out, like a new Sonic-branded toothpaste, and it's like, do we have the energy to post that on our site? Not really. Though there is like some Sonic, what is that show? Shattered Heart? I don't know, that Netflix show. See, it's come and gone. They haven't really kept up too well on the promotion with it. I just forgot the name of it, even though I watched the whole thing. But yeah, it's there's an event going on in California. They gave people like a 2-day notice, and they're not even like sharing what it's all about. So I don't know. You can check that out on the Sonic fan sites. I didn't even get a press release. News to me. The news is news to me. But speaking of the news, let's jump into the news. And then we got some product reviews, and then maybe I've got some beef to sizzle. So first up, let's see what's going on. So the top story is this bizarre bit of news that dropped where Sega has launched this CSVRS teaser website, which points potentially to Cosmic Smash VR. I mean, I think it's all but confirmed. Back in, I want to say like 2013, 2014, Sega had renewed the trademark for Cosmic Smash, and we knew that, and then it kind of came and went. Nothing came of it. But here we are now, and what is up, gamers, is that the Sonic, or the Sega Twitter account, which is essentially Sega West, like Europe and America, they shared this teaser site, and we'll visit it right now. In fact, it's C-Smash VRS, and when you go over there, it's very ominous. And then there's this play button, and it's an animated eye. There's this ominous music, and then a countdown. So 17 days, 1 hour, 47 minutes, and 30 seconds. And you can click around on it. It shows little sound waves bumping. And then they take you at the bottom. There's a TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter page. And I'll just mute that for a moment. But if you listen through that, the music's actually pretty good, pretty bumping. But what this is it is a Sega Europe project. It is a VR game, and it is being developed by Wolf and Wood, which is based out in Europe. Their previous titles include Hotel R&R, The Exorcist, Legion VR, and A Chair in a Room, Greenwater. And they've primarily done stuff for PSVR, Steam VR, and Oculus. And they've also done mobile stuff in the past. So there's no mention of this on the Sega Japan Twitter account, so it's not a Japanese title. I mean, as I mentioned, it's being developed in Europe. But it truly feels like it's Sega Europe picking up a long dormant, long dead IP, if you want to call it an IP. I mean, it had one game. Well, it had a arcade release, and then it had a Dreamcast release. And if we want to go over to Sonic Retro, you can see the page for it here. I'm kind of blocking some of the info, but you can see here the arcade cabinet, and I'll enlarge that so you can get a look here. So this is what the game looked like in arcades. Very basic. It uses one of the later candy cabinets, the Astro City kind of line, but this had a completely different name. It's evading my thoughts right now, but so it's not like they really went all out, is what I'm trying to say. Like, this wasn't a dedicated cabinet with like motion controls or anything. It was really just a very basic Sega Naomi game from Sega Rosso, developer, and you can see the controls here. I mean, they are very simple. Cosmic Smash. So you move left, right, you push buttons. Super basic. Like, I would not doubt that this game did not take much time, if at all, to develop back in the day. And it came over to the Dreamcast, Japan only. It was one of the later titles, September 2001. It actually came out. Oh boy, wow, that's fun. Came out 2 days after 9/11, so that's why we weren't really talking about this or pleading Sega to bring it over. We had our own problems out in the West. Ouch, yikes. So here, let's look back at the website. So if you let it run for a while, they've got stuff like Pong. What I find interesting is this is very clear. Oh, I'm playing. Look at that. I had no idea it was interactive. This is me versus the computer. But there's been people suggesting that maybe this is Cosmic Smash versus, like, VRS, and that's possible. Maybe it's like a dual meaning, VR versus Cosmic Smash versus player online. That's my guess, whereas I believe the original Cosmic Smash was against a wall. So this is probably the most someone's talked about Cosmic Smash in about 20 years, but I think it's mildly exciting. I like what they did with Choo Choo Rocket Universe, despite the fact that they let it die. That was a Hardlight developed European sequel to the original Choo Choo Rocket that was a Apple Arcade exclusive, and then when the exclusivity ran out, it slowly started dying on all the platforms. Like, just stopped working. You can't revisit it. There's no plans to re-release it. They sent me a fucking, t-shirt with the Choo Choo Rocket Universe logo, and I was so excited. And now I own a t-shirt for a dead sequel, like 3 years out from when it released. It's wild to me. Very quickly, some Sega Bits news. We do have Sega Talk episodes dropping like they're hot. They come out every 2 weeks. Thunderblade, I'm very proud of this episode. We typically do Patreon picks, but this was a personal pick. I called it a personal pan pizza pick. And it is a deep dive into the development, the release, the re-releases of Thunderblade, how it plays on the 3DS M2 release versus the arcade release. So check that out. Shining Force 2 is the episode that preceded that, and George hosted that one. Very exciting. And then we have Sonic Triple Trouble actually coming up next. I think we're recording that next week, so I'm excited for that. Also, a little bit of site news. The Sega Bits Swing and Report Show podcast is turning 13 next year. So that was the podcast that launched alongside Sega Bits back in February 2010. The hosts, to my memory, were George, Aki At, and Ryan, former writer for the site. And Aki and George are still with the site. They occasionally appear on Swing and Report Show podcasts. And of course, George hosts Sega Talk alongside myself. But it's just, I don't know, I looked into it. I was like, what is the longest running Sega podcast? And as it turns out, it's the Sega Bits Swing and Report Show. We put out, there was 1 year, 2020, which was the pandemic, where we only put out one episode. But there has been a consistent release. I say consistent. There's been releases every year, anywhere from 1 in 2020 to 10 last year to, I think, dozens in prior years. And it began basically as this show. This show is what Sega News Bits is what the... Am I back? All right, I'm back. It looks like I cut out. I don't know where I cut out, and that's the first time that's ever happened to me. Sorry. But I'll just talk about the Swing and Report Show. I'll just kind of start from the top. So the Swing and Report Show is turning 13 years old next month. It is the longest running Sega podcast, and the reason for that is that we put out episodes every year. At the very least, there was one in 2020, and at the most, there were dozens in those earlier years. But I've gone back to a monthly release. It's much more focused on interviews with industry talent, people within the community, and it's also focused on folks who, just have something to talk about. We had David on not too long ago from Sonic Retro talking about the Sonic timeline. And speaking of timelines, if you're watching this live, let me know in the comments like what happened when I went offline, because it's never happened before. So I don't know if this is like a new broadcast or if like I disappeared and then came back. So I don't know how this is going to appear once it goes out there, but whatever. It's live. The other interesting bit of news is just something that Mike Pollock dropped, is that he co-voiced The End. And The End was the villain in Sonic Frontiers. So it was him and Cindy Robinson voicing the same character at the same time. He was doing the low tones, she was doing the high tones. So now when there's been some people complaining that the Sonic Frontiers game had no Eggman fights. So I guess here's your Eggman fight. Because Mike Pollock voiced The End, it's technically Eggman. But that's interesting. So if you bring photos of the moon to Mike Pollock, he can now sign them. And he can't say, I'm not signing that. He has to do it. And you can get Cindy Robinson on there. So it's a twofer. So that's pretty exciting. What are we getting into now? Now it's product review time. Let me take a sip of my coffee in my Charlie Brown mug. I thought I'd like grab a gamer mug, but I really don't own that many outside of like Next Gen magazine. All right, so if you are a frequent visitor of Target stores, and you can also get these on Amazon, they are these little Build-A-Figures. There are 5 of them right now: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Shadow. And what's interesting about them is, they're static poses. They're not action figures, but you can remove their heads, and then their arms actually fit into these little pegs, and you can replace the arms. It actually comes with 4 arms, and then 2 for each side. I actually have never put that one in. There you go. So you can see you can kind of alter the poses. So he's holding a wrench, and he's making a fist. He's going to, punch someone or something. I thought these were kind of cool. They're like $11, and they're a little bit more online. So if you find these in stores, I think they're not worth anything more than $11, and I'll get to why in a second. But I think the Tails is cool. I like the wrench. You don't see many wrench-holding Tails outside of the Sonic Boom action figures, where like it was a big thing for him to be a handyman with tools. Now here's the Sonic one. His eyes are a little funky. I should have probably... It looks okay at certain angles. Like, that looks all right from the side. That's cool. But then when you got him here, he's a little wonky. And Sonic comes with a ring. He also comes with an emerald, a green emerald, and then a hand. And then you get into Knuckles now. And Knuckles, who I just recently picked up, looks nice. I think it's actually a really nice modern Knuckles like statue for $11. And he comes with a ring. He comes with an emerald. You could say this is like the Master Emerald, but very tiny. He can do a thumbs up. But then one minor annoyance is that the Sonic one here, he also has the green emerald. And I thought you could have done different colored emeralds with the characters, so it's kind of odd for them to both be holding green. Also, the scale. Look at how big Knuckles is. I'm not, like, if I were to hold them like this to the camera and do a little forced perspective, like this is the Hobbit movie, like one's Gandalf and one's Bilbo or something. But this is them side by side, and look at how big Knuckles is by comparison. And it almost makes me afraid to buy, like, Amy or Shadow, because, like, are they just going to keep getting bigger until it's just this massive statue? But for the price, they're all right. I thought Knuckles was a little smaller. He just seems really big here. I don't know. Maybe that's a thing, though, making Knuckles bigger. So maybe that's what they were kind of going for. But I'm fairly certain in Sonic Frontiers, he's the same height as Sonic, like in the modern games. But pick them up if you see them. They're not worth any more than $11, though. Don't give in to the scalpers. Actually, I have a little scalper story. I've been looking all over the place for the Rouge, the Bat, and Dark Chow 2.5-inch figures. And there are, and I don't want to diss stay-at-home moms, but I have a strong feeling that it is a lot of like stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads going out and just buying up stuff and then flipping them on like what is it, Mercury site or whatever it's called, or Facebook Marketplace or eBay, because I can't find these things in stores. I can't find Charmy, I can't find Rouge, Dark Chow, Big, Chaos, but I go on eBay and it's all of these accounts run primarily by like older men, older women who are just selling insane amounts of stuff that I usually was able to find at Target. And I don't know if this is a post-pandemic thing or what, but there's been so much flipping of, and this is becoming a Barry's Beef segment, but they go out, they buy up these figures that are like $9.99 each, and then they flip them on eBay for 30, 40, 50. Like people were asking $50 for Big or $60 for Chaos, and it's just ridiculous. And so anyway, I could not find Rouge and Dark Chow. The way these figures releases work too, they're in waves. So Target will, place an order for more figures to fill the pegs because they're empty. They will receive the latest wave. They'll put them up there. They'll sell out. They might reorder them, or they might restock with the overstock of Sonic figures, because when you buy a case, you get 6 Sonics, and then you get like one of all the other figures, and so that's why you see so many Sonic figures out there. But what happens then is that they might sit on the pegs for a while, and then a few waves might pass, and then when those finally sell out, Target will say, oh, we want another case. They'll send the latest wave, and they might miss a wave. And I feel like that's what actually happened with the wave that had Classic Knuckles and Classic Eggman, because I've never seen those in stores. Thankfully, you can get Knuckles with a winter hat. It's behind the beef sign. But you can get Classic Knuckles, but with a winter hat, so I haven't seen like the Vanilla Knuckles, Vanilla Classic Knuckles, which is kind of weird because Vanilla's a Sonic character, so it's technically, I shouldn't use Vanilla because then it gets confusing. Like, is it him dressed as Cream's mom? Which then opens up a whole other door where it's like, yeah, cross-dressing Knuckles as Cream's mom. And like, where did Vanilla go? Like, what did he do with her? It makes you think. Anyway, where was I going with this? I don't remember. Oh, so I purchased Rouge and Dark Chow off of someone on eBay because I knew that that wave has passed, and I'm not going to find those anymore in stores. So this woman sent me a package, and I opened it up, and it's just Shadow. It's a little 2.5-inch Shadow. And I messaged her, and I was like, you didn't send me the right one. She goes, oh, I must have sent it to the other person. And I was like, are you kidding me? And she's like, yeah, I sent it to the other person, and they didn't send it back. Sorry, you can keep the Shadow. So I told her, can you please send me what I paid for? And then guess what she did? She went, I found another set. So this woman has been sitting on 2 Rouges and 2 Dark Chows, and she was just kind of stringing me along, hoping that I would take the Shadow. And thankfully I pushed it. She said you could keep the Shadow and I'll send the Rouge and the Dark Chow. So that happened. Then I took my Shadow and I took some extra figures that I did not buy to flip, but I got in a case, and they've just been sitting in storage for the longest time. And I put them up on eBay, and I made $50. And that was not flipping. That was what people bid for it on, and these were ones that I got out of cases. So I took this woman's Shadow, and I took 3 figures that I have been having trouble getting rid of, and I made $50 off it. So, I guess in the end, I win, the scalpers lose. We have a Target employee in the broadcast. I saw this a lot when I worked at Target, people buying an absurd amount of same things, couldn't do anything about it, unfortunately. Yeah, I know since then that some stores have done limits where people can only buy 2 of each one, but then they'll just go back to their car and come back and keep buying. But it's just such a shame because I have child, I am with child, I have children myself, and they are getting up to the age where they start to get interested in things. And my daughter was asking me, she's like, are there any Sonic Prime? Oh, and I just remembered the name of the show. Are there any Sonic Prime toys? And I said, nope, there aren't. And if you want any other Sonic toys, you're going to have to take some of Daddy's, because they are not at Target anymore. The only thing we can find is Sonic. So it's such a shame. So I guess my PSA out there is, if you are at a Target, you are a Sonic collector, buy one. don't buy multiples, don't sit on them, don't try to flip them. There are kids out there with their parents going through the Target aisles, and think back to when you were a kid and you were like into something like, I don't know, Ninja Turtles or Ghostbusters or Pokemon or Power Rangers, and you found that one figure that like you kept all these years later. Think of that when you're at Target now, and think of those kids who are probably like, oh, it's a Shadow action figure. Oh, it's Big the Cat. He's that funny guy in Sonic Frontiers, the first Sonic game I've ever played, you know. So be respectful of the children. I believe the children are our future. And this is the singing part. So that pretty much does it for this Sega News Bits Live. Sorry for the technical snafu. I'm interested to see how that worked out. I don't know if there was like static or something. Oh, and here's the post-credit scene because I'm not done yet. Wonder Boy Anniversary Collection. I finally received this from Strictly Limited Games. I purchased this. This isn't like review copy. No one gives me review copies on anything, really, physically especially. But it's nice. You know, I waited a long time. I was a little annoyed that the digital-only release was announced of this, and I still didn't have the physical in hand that I paid for almost a year ago. But it's got beautiful inner cover art. The manual is nice. The manual's pretty basic. It just shows like control scheme, character art. You go into the back here, and it shows just like screenshots from the games. But it's nice to have a full color manual. I know, you know, when they made these Switch cases, they always put the little holder for a manual, and then you buy like the latest and greatest Mario game, and it doesn't have a manual. Like you'd think like Nintendo would shell out for their big name IP, but they don't. But it's a great release. I don't know if it's worth $50 digitally, and I don't even know if this was worth $50 physically, which is what I roughly paid. But I really like that it's almost all here. I'm sure there's ports that are missing, but what they do include is pretty beefy. You got Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap, Wonder Boy Monsterland, Wonder Boy in Monster World, Wonder Boy 3 Monster... what is this? Monster Land? And then Monster World 4. And this is a franchise I've always like dabbled in, but never been super into, and I've always been chronologically confused by the titling and by the gameplay, like just completely switching up, going from an arcade-style side-scroller to a kind of like action RPG. But I highly recommend this release. It's a great way to play through all of them on multiple platforms. I think this is like the first SG-1000 game I've seen ported in years. I could be wrong, but you know. Sega Mark III, Game Gear, Master System, Arcade, Genesis, Mega Drive. It has the English translation of Monster World 4, which has also appeared on the Mega Drive Mini and on the Xbox 360 release with all the Monster World games. And I think the biggest selling point for me, and I'm usually against it, is the rewind function. My issue with rewind functions in retro game collections is that it becomes a part of the gameplay. Like, you're less focused on playing the game and trying to survive, and you're more focused on finding that rewind point. So you're like going, oh, I got hit, rewind, rewind. Oh, I got hit, rewind, rewind, rewind. And if you're playing the game on like an easy mode, like what M2 would do for their releases, you actually learn to play the game, survive, enjoy it. Whereas with compilations like this, where they do the rewind mode, you're more stuck on thinking about when that ideal point to rewind is, which completely changes the gameplay. It becomes a gameplay element. That same thing exists in this compilation, the Disney Classics collection. But again, these are excellent ways to play these classic Sega-released games. But I honestly far prefer how they do it in collections like Pac-Man Museum or Atari 50, where there is no rewind, there is no game over, but it's unlimited play. And in the case of like M2 works, like on the Mega Drive Mini or in some of the Sega Ages releases, I really like how M2 finds ways to make super easy modes. I recently did that Thunderblade Sega Talk episodes that I mentioned, and the easy mode on that allows the helicopter to bounce into objects but not explode. it's a game changer. It allowed me to play through all of Thunderblade and enjoy it and feel like I was still being challenged, but I never had that rewind function in the back of my head. I believe that Sonic Origins at one point had that as a possibility because people found like a rewind effect in the code. I'm so glad they didn't put that in there. I think Sonic does not need rewind function. It's actually a very easy franchise to play, just given the whole way that rings operate. But still, yeah, I highly recommend this. If you can still get it physically, they have some like premium releases on their site. I wouldn't go with those because they're like over $100. But if you're a fan of this franchise and you missed out on the physical release, check out the digital one. I think it's a fantastic collection. There's 21 versions spanning 6 games. I actually played more of Wonder Boy and Monster World 4 last night than I ever have, thanks to the rewind function, which I just complained about. But in the case of this, like, they're not M2. What is it? IN Games, or actually it's a company called Blissbrain. I don't really know who handled this compilation, but they're not M2. They're not going to go all out and give you an easy mode and give you bonus modes and like a never die mode and infinite continues. There are some options for those types of things, like your score gives you more lives and things like that, but for what it is, the rewind mode was the best they could do to make this, I think, playable for modern generations, modern gamers. Same with this one. So, yeah, Nintendo Switch. It's basically, a retro port. You know, that's like the featured image on YouTube. I'll look mad. Like that. That's a good one. That's like an RGT 85. Our good friend of the show, who I've never actually talked to or met. But yeah, that'll just about do it for Sega News Bits Live. I'm hoping to do more of these this year. More. Next month, we are doing the 13th anniversary episode of the Sega Bit Swing and Report Show. I'm hoping to get George and Aki on to do a little retrospective on Sega Bits, retrospective on the Swing and Report Show, talk about our favorite moments on the podcast. And beyond that, there's a lot of fun stuff happening this year, I think. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. But thank you for watching, and I will see you on Sega Talk. I will see you on the Swing and Report Show, and I'll see you on the next Sega News Bits Live.